It's the Muelendez monthly. Are we monthly? Are we not monthly? Special editions only. I don't even know anymore, Mike, but we're back.
We
Mendez,
back.
Mendez, Muelendez. We're back. And there's a whole lot going on to start our summer. We've got international soccer friendlies. We've got the Stanley Cup, the NBA Finals. We've got the MLB in full summer swing coming up on the All-Star game in about a month. And we are going to talk about all of that right now. But first, I think we should start with Mike. Let's just get it out of the way. Let's address the elephant in the room. Everybody in South Florida, I'm going to be covering the Club World Cup, but everybody knows that what is the most relevant right now in this area, without a doubt, how about those Panthers?
Yes, yes, yes. How about those Panthers, baby? Just 2 wins away now from going back to back, trying to join what very few teams in NHL history have done, and that is win back-to-back Stanley Cups. Now, the last team to do it was their in-state rival, Tampa Bay Lightning, when they won the 2020 and 2021 Stanley Cup, respectively. And they're trying to go back to back now. They're 2 wins away. Game four, at the time of this recording, will be played tomorrow, Thursday, June 12th. Now we're recording this on June 11th. And tonight's also game three of the NBA Finals. Now we're going to get into that a little bit later on in the episode. Lots to talk about in that series as well. But I think we're going to need to start talking about Florida as the new capital of hockey because this is
Crazy,
the
isn't it?
sixth. Yeah, it's very crazy. This is the sixth straight year that a team from Florida is in the Stanley Cup final. It's the third year in a row that the Panthers are in the Stanley Cup final. It's the third straight year that the Panthers, I mean, the Panthers are just really freaking good, man. Sam Bennett is in very strong contention for the Conn Smythe Trophy. And for those of you who don't know, the Conn Smythe Trophy is essentially what the NBA Finals MVP trophy is for hockey. It's what the National League and American League MVP trophies are for baseball. It's essentially the NHL playoffs most valuable player trophy. That's what the Conn Smythe is. But you also got to throw Sergei Bobrovsky's trophy in there because he's having an incredible year as well in the playoffs for the Panthers. And I mean, a 6-1 thrashing of the Oilers. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like people say the Panthers are dirty, and I completely disagree with them. And I get it. I say this all the time, but people are just like people are they need to learn to man up and just admit that the Panthers are just out physicalizing their team and stop crying about it. But what I saw the other night, Edmonton was trying to injure the Panthers with all those slap shots and slashes and all the fighting that was breaking out. Like the Panthers, what they did and what they try to do all the time was get into your heads, and they got into the Oilers' heads. They completely took McDavid and Draisaitl out of the game. They forced the Oilers to go to their other players, their non-vital players. And yes, Corey Perry at 40 years old did score the one power play goal for them. But they forced Stuart Skinner into a really uncomfortable position and had him pulled from the game after allowing 5 goals. And then they brought in the backup in Calvin Pickard, and he ended up allowing a goal, and it was 6-1, but the game was already well over at that point. And I mean, the Panthers are just 2 wins away now from repeating as Stanley Cup champions. And people are asking, is Connor McDavid, is he still in contention for the Conn Smythe, even though he still has 25 assists in the playoffs, but only 6 goals? Is Leon Draisaitl still in contention? I know Panthers are already up 2-1 in the series with game four being tomorrow, and the Panthers having all the momentum in the series with a double overtime win in game two, now a 6-1 win in game three a couple nights ago, and now with all this momentum going into game four, still in Sunrise, mind you. They're not even going back to Edmonton until Monday night or whenever the next game in Edmonton is going to be, because that's going to be game five. And should Florida win tomorrow night, Panthers can obviously win the Stanley Cup in Edmonton, and that would just upset a lot of Canadian fans. And I know that Edmonton fans are not going to like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, as a Panther fan, I love it. As a hockey fan, I love it. Honestly, I kind of want Florida to win game 4, but then have them almost want to lose game 5 just so that they can win it on home ice again in game 6. I feel like it would just
Sure.
kind of be like a little full circle moment
Well,
that would be
and
pretty nice.
and
But
I'm gonna be honest.
I feel like it would also be pretty sweet to win it on the road in Edmonton too. Because I mean, we've also won every series in the playoffs thus far in Edmonton on the road. So I feel like it would be pretty sweet. But I mean, just an all-out dominant playoffs thus far from the Panthers.
Before I get into kind of my main points that I want to be very clear that I'm not the hockey guy. I'm Muelendez. The hockey guy's above me. All right. I think on everybody's screen will be above. Pretty sure. We'll be side by side eventually. But anyway,
Eventually.
for socials purposes, clips are gonna start going on social media, eh, Mike? Oh yeah.
Hey,
Oh
hey,
yeah.
hey,
This is
hey.
the first time we're gonna start doing that. I think that'll bring a lot more attention um to what we're saying. But I do want to clarify one thing, Mike. So you are saying, Michael Muella is saying that Edmonton is a dirty team and that the Panthers are simply being physical, correct? So far, so good?
Well, they were clearly the dirtier team in game 3. I'm not saying that they're a dirtier team overall. I'm just saying that I don't think the Panthers are dirty as a team. I'm
Okay.
just saying that what I saw, uh, from what I've seen overall, the Panthers are not dirty. They're just a more physical team than whoever they play against. Yes, they may do whatever they can to to win, sure, but they hit people in the boards. They hit you in open ice. I mean, that's the game of hockey. It's a physical game. That's what they're supposed to do. But no, overall in game 3, Edmonton was intentionally slashing Florida players with their sticks below the waist, below the ankles, and fighting and punching players. And Edmonton was clearly the dirtier team in game 3.
Well, Mike Muella has spoken, everyone. And
I have spoken.
I'll be honest, from what I've seen, it seemed that way to me a little bit. Even honestly, going back to game one, which is really the only game I watched at length, and I'll talk about what I think will be just from a momentum point of view, kind of the keys there. But I do think just to close out our Stanley Cup final segment before we get into predictions, I do think that you go back to game one, you look at how, again, from someone outside perspective, where I'm like, I just see somebody getting absolutely killed against the boards, and I'm thinking, oh, that's got to be something, and it's got to be some sort of illegal contact. No, no, all good, And it was
Yeah.
really, of course, Edmonton kind of started really being physical right out of the gate. How else are you supposed to respond? I mean, you're not just gonna, especially in a game of hockey. You're not going to just let your team be bullied. You're not going to stand down. You can't really afford to do that in hockey. You also can't afford to be up 3-1 and then lose the game. I don't care if you're away. I don't care if it's game one.
Yeah.
That's something that Florida can't really have. And I know the double OT game, the game after, crazy. But from my point of view, I just think that the more you do that, the more you do that of kind of feeling a little bit complacent and saying, "Oh, we're up 3-1. Let's kind of coast going into the third period." There's a lot games are won and lost in the third period, from what I see. A lot.
Yep.
Um, and I mean you saw that goal from Edmonton that to that um brought it to OT. Um, that goal in the third period in game two. I mean, those are the really important moments so far in the series. So I think a really pivotal game 4. The way I look at it, if if the Panthers don't win game four, we're talking about them having the momentum, but the Oilers tie the series up going back home, all of a sudden momentum has completely flipped. I think you
Agreed.
go 2-2 back in Edmonton, even even then, I mean the Panthers again have already pulled out a win there, but uh you go split home and away, and I mean we know how important game fives are across a bunch of different sports.
Hmm.
That gives the edge to Edmonton, but I do think I will say this. For my prediction at least, Panthers win tomorrow. Panthers will win in six. They'll probably
Yeah,
lose at Edmonton. Maybe they'll win, but I honestly doubt a 4-1
yeah.
series. I think it's been too good so far to only go to 5 games. So I think Panthers win game four. They'll win the series overall 4-2. I
Hmm.
do think if Edmonton takes game four, though, and ties it up, Oilers in seven. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I do think that it is going to go at least six. I don't think it's going in five, although I do think it would be great if it did end in five. But it's like Connor McDavid said in the presser after the game, it's a huge swing game. If the Panthers win and keep the momentum, they can close out the series and win back-to-back Stanley Cups and lift the cup in Edmonton. And I know that's going to be just such a gut-wrenching feeling for the Oilers. Probably the best, probably a better team than they had last year, when they were in the Cup final against the Panthers, ironically, and they lost in Game 7 here in South Florida, and now I feel like this Panthers team is even better than they were last year. Also, like I feel like both teams are better than they were last year, and last year, Florida was up 3-0 in the series. Edmonton didn't even win a game in the series till game four in Edmonton. And Edmonton won the first game in this series in overtime. And now the Panthers are on the verge of going up 3-1 in the series, winning three straight in Edmonton, and then both on home ice in games two, three, and four. But again, obviously, a lot can happen in the next 48 hours between now and 8 p.m. puck drop tomorrow night. But again, a lot can happen. I think Edmonton will bounce back tomorrow, but I don't think it's going to be a big time rebound. I don't think it's going to be like a complete blowout rebound. I do think they will play a lot better, but I do have Florida, the Panthers winning tomorrow, and going up 3-1 back to Edmonton. And I do think it is going to end in six, like you said.
All righty. Well, there you go. Moving over to the other finals that are going on right now, of course, in American sports. The NBA finals. I think it's been really interesting to see not only that, maybe we expected to see the Wolves, maybe we expected to see Boston or New York in from the Eastern Conference. But it's been interesting to have an MVP on a team like OKC. Sam Presti, after so many years of picks and everybody, what are you doing? You're getting a pick for 2023? Dude, that's 5 years away. Well, there you go. He had a master plan all along, and it's starting maybe to pay its dividends. I'd consider it. Here's my take on the finals right now. Of course, it's interesting to have your MVP to play against, all stars like Tyrese Halliburton and Miles Turner over on Indy, but to have a team that was so incredibly, nearly the most historically successful team in the regular season to then make the finals, the Thunder, I think, to genuinely have a successful season, need to win the finals. I think.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, and again, you can go back to, that historic Warriors team that doesn't end up winning at all, you know,
Hmm.
but I mean, they were facing LeBron James, right? You're not, I think
Yeah.
we're going to look back in history, and is Tyrese Halliburton going to be a great player? Absolutely. Is he
Yeah,
going
of
to be a,
course.
a perennial all-star? Yes. will we look back on this decades later and say, I mean, OKC had a heck of a run with Chet and SGA, but you know, but they lost to one of the best players of all time? No, we're not. I don't think we will. That's why I think that the Thunder really need to take advantages because I mean, obviously, game one was close. Now it's flipping over to Indy. We've seen what people like Pat McAfee have done to rile up, opposing players and everything. It's
Hmm.
not an easy place to play. Um, there at the Gamebridge Fieldhouse, it's not. It honestly never really has been. You go back to the Paul George era of the Pacers when LeBron and the Heat would go up
Hmm.
there, and it was always tough to play. But I
Yeah.
personally think that there's a lot more expectations riding on the Thunder, and with a tied series right now, the Thunder need at least one of these two games on the road to really continue to apply the pressure. Because other than that, um, Indiana's not really going to feel it. But that's what I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And they were talking about this the other day on either Get Up or NBA Countdown, but they were saying that in order for this Thunder team to be considered an all-time great team, it has to end in a championship. And they did mention that 73 and 9 Warriors team in the regular season that they were an all-time great regular season team, but they aren't considering that Steph, KD, Clay, and Draymond Warriors team an all-time great team because they didn't win the NBA title because they held a 3-1 lead in the series, but and lost three consecutive games and then ended up losing the championship in game seven on their
Yep.
home floor. So they said that, they have to get the bigs more involved, like they did in uh, throughout the Western Conference playoffs, like they did in game two, because they really didn't have them involved in game one. And I feel like that's kind of what allowed Indiana to retake control and, ultimately hit the final buzzer beating shot because they didn't have that big man presence, which allowed the Pacers to drive the ball inside and get those easy 2-point baskets. And when they put the bigs inside, Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein, forced Indiana to move back out to the perimeter to the baseline, and it forced all those tougher outside jumper shots. And look at what happened. OKC won the game 123 to 107 and made it a 1-1 series. Um, and again, SGA is the current front runner for Finals MVP. He just had a 38-point game two, and I mean, he won the NBA regular season MVP. I think that was pretty unanimous. There
Yeah.
was really no other choice. Um, I mean, I do like the fact that Indiana did keep the series close. I thought it was a shock that they won the first game on the road. And honestly, losing by 16, it's not as bad as people think. I feel like if they had lost by 20 or more, I feel like it would have been a lot worse. But keeping it keeping it within 20 points is okay. OKC is a very physical, very young, very aggressively in the paint scoring team. So scoring 123 points and still only losing by 16 is okay. Had you only scored on your offensive glass, like let's say you had only scored, excuse me, had only scored 90 and you lost 123 to 97, okay, then there's talk for conversation. But yes, Tyrese Halliburton, this is definitely his breakout season, and we are going to be talking about him for many years to come as a future great player. I don't know if he's going to be an all-time great player, but he is definitely going to be a great player and a future star in this league, especially after that really kind of unknown start that he had with the Kings when he first kind of came into the league a couple of years ago. But then when he ended up making his way to Indiana, he really kind of put himself into that upper tier of, okay, it's time for me to kind of break out of this mold where I'm going to put myself above the rest and take out these teams. I'm going to take out a former MVP in Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm going to take out a former champion in uh or no, because Donovan Mitchell really did win an MVP or didn't win a title, but I'm gonna take out a former playoff contender in Donovan Mitchell and the Cavaliers, the one of the best regular season teams all time with 64 wins. I'm gonna take out a team that just beat the defending champions in the New York Knicks, and I'm gonna send my team to their first NBA championship in 25 years. And now I'm going to lead my team to their first win in the NBA Finals in their franchise's history. Okay, awesome. Now, can you actually lead your team to raising the title? That's the big question. Because look at what Reggie Miller did all those years. He spent his entire
Yep.
17, 18-year career in Indiana with the Pacers, or 19-year careers, because that's what 87 to 05, 19-year career with the Pacers. And he only got to one NBA championship. And
Yep.
he unfortunately never won the title. And now here you are in like what, year 6 or 7, and you're in your first finals, and you have a shot to win your first, and you're tied 1-1 in the series, but can you step up when can you step up when it matters the most and kind of put yourself above the rest and beat the MVP? I don't know. A long way to go in the series with game 3 happening later tonight, but definitely going to be interesting to see where Halliburton and the rest of the Pacers go from here. But it's going to be a fun rest of the series for sure, no doubt.
Yeah, I think it's interesting kind of how you look at the two teams' approaches. I think on the defensive end, you know, it's what we typically see. It's getting your shot creators, using your best players. It's not as much of a system game. You're not running sets same way you are in college ball. Very different, obviously, from what you see in March Madness, where you see teams doing the weave and you see a back
Hmm.
screen getting set and you see a front door cut and a back door cut and you see these players, jumping out to the wings to get shooters open. It's very much a handler, creator sort of economy offense. And that's how both teams defended as well. What's interesting is for me is you look and you talked about the loyalty and for guys like Miles Turner that now people are like, oh, did you always know this was gonna happen? He was just like, I don't know, I'm just a loyal guy. I'm loyal to my
Hmm.
team. I wanted to stay here, see what happens and good for him. And been a very balanced scoring attack. You look at both games that they lost, and you have a lot of players kind of sitting around that 10 to 15 point range, which is very different from the Thunder because obviously you have Shea, who he's dropping 30 plus, and he probably will for the rest of the finals. And obviously you'll have other guys off the bench, whether it's Alex Caruso or Chet Holmgren or even, Jalen Williams and
Hmm.
Lou Dort, who's obviously more known for his defense. But
Yeah.
um, even, Aaron Wiggins, Cason Wallace, have potential to go for those types of games. So
Yeah,
I
and
think that's
Hartenstein too,
interesting.
because he's always
Yeah,
standing in the paint and takes those
yeah,
lobs too. But he's also
yeah,
got a great spin move right down in the low post, so he can
yeah.
always drop 10 points a night too.
Yeah. So you have all those different options, but obviously you're going to depend a lot more on one guy
Hmm.
than I think the Pacers because you just look at Halliburton and he'll dish some assists for sure. So will Pascal Siakam, but there's not the one guy that you think. I think they're comfortable with Benedict Mathurin and Andrew Nemhard taking shots down the stretch. I don't think that's something that they're going away from. I mean, those are guys that have played 20, 30 plus minutes,
Hmm.
all year, all season throughout the playoffs. So it'll be really interesting, tied 1-1. I really don't know what way this series swings. It's pretty even. You could give it to the Thunder. They're just more explosive. They're younger, they're hungrier, they kind of have more expectations to compete with than the Pacers. But I think this is going all the way. I think this is going to game 7. Um, and honestly, I can see a game winner from Indiana late, kind of we're talking maybe not complete buzzer beater, but under a minute type of game. I like the Pacers a lot because they have guys with championship experience like Pascal Siakam. Um, I think the Thunder are really good, but it's always hard to compete when everything is expected of you and you're expected to win in 5 games, and if not in 6 games, and you just have, like I said, it's a lot easier to be on a big stage with no pressure than it is with the weight of your fan base and the league on your shoulders. So I that's my take. Pacers in 7.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I had OKC in six.
Okay.
I had OKC in six. It had Indiana. At least probably either gotten one in OKC or at least split in Indy, and they got ended up getting one in OKC. They ended up splitting in OKC. I also think they split. I feel like they split in OKC. They split in Indy. I think OKC wins tonight. I think Indy wins game four. Then I think OKC wins in game five, and then OKC closes it out in Indy in game six. But Indy does keep it close in the closeout game.
Boom.
Boom,
Boom, boom, boom. And let's
boom.
or boom. Dude, I couldn't get into the dining hall when they were filming at Centennial.
I mean, yeah, they kind of closed it off because there was like 100 people in there already.
I know. I was really mad. I was like, I didn't even know they were there. I was just hungry. I was like, yo, let me get a burger. And they were like, no, there's food testers in there, some TikTok guys. I was like, who? And I just hear boom,
And you're
boom.
like, oh.
I was like, oh, yeah, I know those guys. I know who they are. Anyway, very, very interesting how the world works nowadays. But we got
Yeah.
a little bit left in this first half of the episode before we get into everything football. But let's talk MLB All-Stars because we
Hmm.
don't need to talk the Marlins. Let's
Man,
please
don't
not do that.
even.
Let's please not do
Don't
that.
don't even, bro.
Um,
I've given up on them again. So it's
yeah,
over.
I mean, I knew it was gonna be another one of those seasons when they got swept at home versus the Rockies. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's just beyond sad, man. That's just I don't want to say pathetic, but it's a little bit pathetic to get swept at
Dude,
home.
our total attendance over those three games was 19,000. Our total attendance was
I'm
19,000.
surprised that many people went, to be honest.
Oh, I
Honestly.
think our lowest I think our lowest attendance for a game for one of those games was like 5,300 something. I don't know the exact numbers, but oh my God, it was
Yeah. No, it's just kind of crazy that a
not
team
to
has
mention the fact that we also lost today again to the Pirates.
yeah. Yeah. So let's move on because that just hurts to talk about.
Yeah, but
Um, I think we should start with NL All-Stars. I think it's really
yeah.
interesting um how Freddie Freeman and Pete Alonso are really competing. You know, they've both emerged obviously in past couple years as, two of the top first baseman.
Hmm.
I would say overall in Major League Baseball, but definitely in the NL. Um, and it's difficult because it's like Pete Alonso is always there, and of course, for the home run derby and other things in All-Star Weekend. Um, a lot more injuries we're seeing across baseball in general, but I'm interested to get your take on for me, I don't like Freddie Freeman that much, but I do think that just how he's hitting and with the power he's showing, um, I'm gonna take Freddie Freeman to start at first base in the NL, but we'll start there with you.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, me personally, I just have this like vendetta against Freddie Freeman just because all of his tenure as a Brave against the Marlins. He's a Marlin killer. So is Pete Alonso. They just
Yep.
whatever what I don't know, whatever it It is, but any just seems every time they play against the Marlins, they just have our number every time. But both of them are just really incredible baseball players. So I mean, you really can't take anything away from them. I do have pretty much have Otani and Aaron Judge pretty much locked in at their respective designated hitter
Oh
spots
yeah,
for
that's no
the
doubt.
National and American League for their starting lineups. I do have a note here with posing the question of will Paul Skeens be the National League starter for the second year straight? And do you also want to have the question of should Tarek Skubal be the AL starter? You know, he's the reigning Cy Young winner, and he's off to another really good start this year as well. I mean, also some trade deadline predictions. Is it time to get Paul Skeens out of Pittsburgh? Could the Marlins possibly be moving Sandy Alcantara if he picks up his form like he did yesterday, which with he pitched six really good innings. Um, but yeah, there could be a lot of big time questions, you know, with baseball coming up here because there could be a lot of big names on the move. You know, Sandy's been always linked at since the start of the season that he could be on the move. Um, you know, and it's been a lot of pitchers too. You know,
Yeah.
Skeens has been linked to be rumored to get out of Pittsburgh. Even some big time free agent players too. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. prior to signing an extension with Toronto was rumored to have wanted out of Toronto. Um, a lot of big time players too. Pete Alonso before he actually ended up signing an extension with the
Yep.
Mets. Um, Juan Soto, I know that there was a lot of controversy up in New York before he actually ended up signing with the Mets after he left the Yankees. Very ironic. So he just pretty much packed up his locker room from Yankee Stadium and just moved across town to the other stadium in New York. So pretty much that.
Yeah, don't even mention the name. Why mention the name?
Mm,
Subway
eh,
Series, relevant only because of a couple guys, but I do think that um New York fans overvalue their players and their
hmm
teams quite a bit. I mean, I find
Yeah.
it unbelievable that New York fans have not abandoned, and I get it, he's the Yankees captain, whatever, but I cannot believe that Yankees fans have not abandoned Aaron Judge. I would never in my life, ever forgive him for dropping that ball in the World Series.
I
I,
mean,
no,
yeah, but
no,
he
I don't
also
care.
decided, yeah, but he could have gone anywhere in free agency, but he had decided to sign a 9 year extension with them.
I
And
I get it, but I can't.
and this was also after he had been rumored to have been linked to have and this was months prior to the season ending. He had actually been rumored to have been linked to sign with the Red Sox, which would have been a major
Yeah, but
no-no
he was never.
to
He can't
Yankee
pay.
fans.
He can't pay Ruth that. I mean, come on. We're not. I don't.
He would have reversed Ruth them because Ruth went from Boston to New
I know.
York. He would have done a reverse Ruth.
I know, but there's no way a player that big with that much power, that important to the modern game of baseball is gonna do that. There's no way. But anyway, off my Aaron Judge hater train. Um, it'll be interesting, at least for me, to see if Tatis gets that last outfield spot. I think the month of June is obviously going to be very important for him because of course, when you face accusations and suspensions and you have to
Mhm.
come back and really be good. Um, a lot of really interesting outfielders and young players in the NL. I think in the end, um, just the fact Juan Soto is not even going to start for for the NL is kind of crazy. Obviously considering what happened in the offseason. But I do think it's interesting to see players like um, Bobby Witt Jr.
He-
Really starting to shine. Obviously, we talked about Tariq Skubal. What happens
mhm.
with him? What happens to Paul Skeens? We'll see which teams are really sellers. It'll also be interesting if Chris Bubich um, is really. going to continue his dominance for the Royals as well. It'll be interesting to see a couple Royals players back. Haven't seen that in quite some time, but I think we'll leave our baseball segment at that. And in the second half of our show, we'll talk football. So back with our soccer segment. And Mike, first thing I want to ask, you're in Orlando, I'm in Miami, Club World Cup going on in both of our cities. But just now is when I'm starting to notice the week. We're only a couple days away. We're about 80 hours from the start of the opening game. And only now are we starting to see billboards and ads and more marketing. But you talk to, and I play here in Miami, there's lots of people I come across that know, obviously, that I'm a commentator and reporter and do everything soccer related. And when I talk to them about the Club World Cup, no reaction, no real passion shown for the tournament. They don't really care. Um, but I'm interested to see kind of what it's like in Orlando and what are people saying out there? Do people know about the tournament? There's a lot of people that don't understand what it is, that don't know about it, that don't care, that think it's too expensive. All of those things are kind of going in, but I'm interested to hear what you're seeing and hearing in Orlando.
Yeah, I feel like people know what it is, and I feel like people know who's playing in it. I know that we've spoken about it privately over text,
Of course.
leading up to this episode. Like I know that we mentioned that Juventus and Man City are both up here in Orlando. And we know that Inter Miami is also part of it, down south. But I'm surprised that as big, and as national, as it is, that it's not really being as talked about as I think it should be up here.
Right.
I really haven't seen that much news coverage about it up here. Being that, that they're gonna have games played, both here in Orlando City Stadium, Camping World Stadium, and I believe they were also going to be playing games at Raymond James. I think I could be wrong on that, so don't hold me to it.
Yeah, but I
But
know two stadiums at least in Orlando.
yeah,
That was
yeah,
interesting.
that's Camping World and Orlando City's stadium. But yeah, no, I'm definitely surprised that it's definitely not getting as much media attention as I think it should be up here. Considering that we have some pretty big international clubs up here, like we just mentioned, Manchester City and Juventus, really big Premier club. 3 out of the last 4 seasons in a row that they've been European champions of the Premier League, and respectfully also a top flight of the Italian division, Serie A, uh, champions on the Italian side as well. One of Cristiano Ronaldo's old teams before he joined Al Nassr of the Saudi League. Yeah, no, I know of it. I haven't really talked to many people about it up here. I do have a colleague over at work who just got back from studying over abroad. He actually plays for an academy club over there, under Leeds over there, who's
Oh,
actually
very
just going to
cool.
be going back
Nice.
to the Premier League and during the 2025-26 season. So he loves it over there. He knows of it. He's also surprised that it's not getting as much attention, as it is over there. Obviously, over there, across the pond, it is like it's life and death over there. It's like religion over there. Because that's really all they have. They don't have their American football or their baseball or their hockey like we do, or their basketball. Well, I guess they really have more basketball than they do any of the other big four sports like football, baseball, or hockey. But but yeah, no, definitely surprised that both of us that wasn't getting as much, excuse me, coverage over here.
Yeah, and
But
that reaction exactly, Mike. I'm actually glad you did that in that moment because I feel like that's exactly how people see the tournament. I really do. Because
No, and
you
it's
look at it,
fair.
for there's games like, dude, Paris Saint-Germain is the best team in the world right now. I
I've
mean,
Champions League.
imagine winning a Champions League final 5-0. What? And it wasn't close. Like Inter Milan was
Dude,
never in the
they
game whatsoever.
looked, oh my
And
gosh,
now
dude.
they're gonna play at Atletico Madrid in the Rose Bowl, and they're not gonna have. I don't think they will have 60,000 fans watching that game. I don't think.
Dude, they're
But
probably
you
gonna
but you
have
rewind the clock.
less than that.
Yeah, I think it'll be less than that. You rewind the clock about a decade. You go to Ann Arbor, Michigan. You go to the Big House to see, and I get it. It was Ronaldo, and sure, but Real Madrid, Man United got over 100,000 people
Oh
for a
yeah.
friendly, or for a random, meaningless friendly. I mean, say what you will of the format, but you got 100,000 people for from random friendly. Sure, you don't know when they'll play again, but I think on something that clubs are competing for hundreds of millions of dollars, they care. The clubs care. The players care. The starters will all be there, whether or not they just play the Champions League final. FIFA doesn't care. And they're gonna play, and I don't think they'll fill half of the bowl, half of the Rose Bowl, which is really crazy if you think about it. But I do want to move
No.
on to something that's crazier, and that's what's going on with the U.S. men's national team.
Ah,
Is that
yes.
they're going to play in the Gold Cup, but they go down. They get scored on 4 times yesterday versus Switzerland, just in the first half. They end the game with no shots on target. They're missing, I'd say, a decent amount of starters, and a good amount of full starters didn't play. And Switzerland did play, Brilliant Bolo, Ricardo Rodriguez, Manuel Akanji, who's gonna play.
They played
I
most of their A squad while we were playing most of our B squad, essentially.
but honestly, but they only a couple players, um,
Yeah.
realistically from their A squad did Switzerland, because you look at players like Manuel Akanji, who obviously big time player, um,
Nope. Sure, sure.
for Manchester City, and I'm pretty sure he'll still play. It was interesting because, for example, Jan Sommer, the keeper for um, Inter Milan, and also typical Swiss starter, he was not there. He was not there for that friendly, which, I mean, I can't blame him. Um, but it's interesting to see players like Akanji be in there. But it's and I talked about this when it was the Olympic squad, and that was for sure the B team over in the
Mhm.
Paris Olympics when um, doing the coverage over there. But I don't think the embarrassment anymore for the U.S. men's national team is a surprise. I'm not surprised by it. U.S. men's
No.
national team is way behind Switzerland. And the thing is, you play a 0-0 against an English team in the group stage and at the Qatar World Cup, and you think, oh, yeah, baby, we're there. Rah, rah. It's called soccer. No, it's not. No,
No.
it's really not. And
Mm-mm.
I don't think the U.S. is respected on a global stage. I don't even really think they're respected on a continental stage. Because you go back to the last Gold Cup and you look at U.S. losing in San Diego to Panama. Sure, it was the B team. Yes, okay. But still should not be losing to Panama.
Nope.
Um, and yes, Panama's grown a lot. Yes, they qualified to the 2018 World Cup. But other than that, the U.S. should run CONCACAF because Mexico struggled, but now Mexico's beating the U.S. in Nations League. And get this, I don't know if you've caught on to a lot of the what's happened with Christian Pulisic, who's saying, "Oh, my legs are tired, my legs hurt. Oh, I'm Christian Pulisic, my legs are heavy. I play for AC Milan. Wah 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 wah." And he just decides to not play. Embarrassing for him. Sure, they had a conversation with the U.S. Soccer Federation, and then Landon Donovan called out Pulisic,
Mm.
and Pulisic's dad got on Twitter to go at Landon Donovan, and really it's pathetic because I think that we've seen Gio Reyna's dad be very involved with how many minutes
Oh,
his son's playing. It's
yeah.
just such an American attitude. You know what I mean? It's such an American attitude to have. And I
Yeah, it's
and I
just
get
like the whiny, moany type of
what?
like, guys, come on.
And I know the saying is daddy's girl, but it's like it's two of daddy's boys, and daddy's there. Oh, son, you're not playing. I'm gonna talk to the coach. I'm gonna talk to the coach. And
It's
it's just you look. You see Dennis Rodman talking to Emma Hayes about Trinity Rodman getting subbed off early. No, you
okay.
want to know
Well, first
why?
of all, Trinity
Because
Rodman's a
Trinity
badass.
Rodman.
Let's not disrespect Trinity Rodman
Oh,
right
I'm not.
now.
I'm saying the opposite. You
Let's
want to know
not
why?
disrespect Trinity Rodman right now.
You
Trinity
want to know
Rodman's a freaking beast,
You want to know why Dennis Rodman doesn't? Not that he would, but you a reason he doesn't have to because she scores bangers, because
and she's a freaking monster, dude.
she wins gold medals, because doesn't need to say anything. So uh, I think that it's really, really sad for the U.S. to go into another Gold Cup on a low because then, uh, listen, Trinidad looked good yesterday versus Costa Rica. I was commentating
Hmm.
that game. Um, Costa Rica, missing a little bit of cojones, as we say, right? Um,
Yeah,
but that
we
that's
do,
that.
we do tend to reference our cojones a lot
Yep,
as
yep.
very proud Latinos. We do
That's right.
reference
That's
them a
right.
lot.
But that's not atypical for Costa
No.
Rica to be lacking that. Um
Hmm.
Not really in their style of play. But I close my eyes, I take a deep breath and sigh and hope for the best for the USMNT, just overall for the showing of a host nation. I mean, I think Canada will definitely have a better showing in the 2026 World Cup than the US and then Mexico, because Mexico has a whole thing. They might lose the inaugural game. That's something we'll talk about later with all the issues with the Azteca Stadium. But
Yeah.
I just want to get your thoughts on overall the outlook on the Gold Cup, who you think the favorites are, because I think after the US's performance last night, they're no longer anywhere near the favorites, I think.
No, I think after last night, I think their entire focus has shifted toward the World Cup for 2026. Especially with the fact that I was looking at their roster shortly before we their Gold Cup roster shortly before we started our recording the last session. And their roster for the Gold Cup, there's no Christian Pulisic and there's no Tim Weah on their roster. So those are two huge pieces from
Yeah.
not only their last Gold Cup roster, their last Nations League roster, but their last World Cup roster also that they're going to be missing, and two huge not only morale boosters, but two huge goal scorers and goal contributor pieces that they're going to be missing. So, I mean, losing 4-0 to Switzerland in your last game before the Gold Cup, sure, it was your B team. Okay, we get that, like we mentioned. But I mean, it shows no confidence. I mean, it shows no confidence in the manager. It shows no confidence from your supporters, from your fans, from your countrymen. It shows no faith from your team. Like, okay, if we can't beat the most neutral competition team in a friendly that means absolutely nothing for us. Like, what does this mean for us when we turn to our next game in July that's actually going to mean something? And if we can even make it out of the group stage, eh, and now we have to after that, our next game after that's going to be international friendlies right before the World Cup, and we're going to struggle there. And then we end up going to the World Cup, and we just completely drop a load in on our own soil in our own country, and we just completely, just lay a fat egg and don't even. I think the U.S. has failed to make it past the round of 16 in uh, I don't even think they made it past the round of 16 since the 90s, I think. I want to say it was 1992, I think was the last time they made it out of the round of 16 or something like that. But they have not gotten out of the round of 16
Yeah,
in
94.
years. Yeah,
94?
94, I think, or it was one of those
Yeah.
years in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah,
But they
94.
have in 94. So it's been well over 20, almost 30 years now that the US has struggled to make it past the first round of the knockout stages. They've been great in group stage competition, lots of wins, plenty of draws, very few losses. And, now with a new managerial system, this is your first World Cup in the post Greg Berhalter era. And, you had a pretty good World Cup the last time in Qatar. You won a couple and then you drew a couple. Okay, you got to the knockout stages and then you absolutely laid an egg against the Netherlands. Okay, great. That doesn't do anything for you. Now you have to go to the Gold Cup after the Berhalter era, which was a complete flop and ended in just probably one of the most terrible ways possible with the whole Giovanni Reina situation. And then not only does that end in the most mind-boggling way, but you bring him back in a smaller role as like an advisor to the manager, and you're like, what was the point of even firing him? Like you fire him only to then bring him back in a smaller adversary role? Like, come on. And then now while all of this is going on, you're struggling to win friendlies. You're struggling to win qualifying games. Now, granted, you didn't even have to qualify for the World Cup because it's on your own soil and all host nations automatically qualify. So USA, Canada, Mexico are already in. But now you're struggling to win friendlies against, teams like Colombia, Venezuela, Mexico, and now Switzerland. And not only that, but you're struggling to even score goals against these teams. And not now you have to go to the Gold Cup, which is a tournament that you have dominated over the last couple of years. You've won this tournament like 6 out of the last 7 years or 8 years that you played in it. And you don't have your best player. You don't have your second best player going into it, which is arguably Christian Pulisic and Tim Weah. And now you have the whole situation where, oh, this is happening, but my dad is gonna do this, and oh my gosh, grow a set and grow up. Come on. This is not the way that you want to go into international competition, especially in the tournament that's number one on your own soil, in a tournament that you've dominated and you should be dominating, especially after the way that you exited the last time you played this tournament in an embarrassing loss in penalties to Panama and in practically your own backyard in San Diego. And and now after that, your next big international competition is the World Cup, where you are arguably the second biggest favorite outside of Canada. Because the big two favorites in this World Cup are Canada, USA, and I don't know if you probably want to throw Argentina in there, depending on if Messi's playing to defend the World Cup, or Portugal, depending on if Ronaldo's going to end up playing. I don't know if he's going to or not. They did just win UEFA Nations League. I do. You could make the argument that España could contend as well for this World Cup because they played really well in UEFA Nations League in the final against Portugal. But there are a lot of teams that could contend this year at the World Cup in the coming months
Yeah.
now with the World Cup now just over a year away. And there's obviously a lot still to be determined, a lot of rosters that still need to be finalized and a lot of qualifying games that still need to occur. So we do know three teams that are going to be in the tournament,
Of
which is
course.
USA, Canada, Mexico. And USA, Canada are the top two favorites. But I mean, if the
They
USA
got to figure
doesn't
it
win the
out.
Gold Cup, they need to figure a lot of stuff out. And I think anything less than a win at the Gold Cup is a failure. And
Yeah.
I think anything less than a win at the World Cup on your own backyard is a failure. At least anything less than either a semifinal or finals appearance, let alone a win, is going to
Yeah.
be considered a failure.
I think, yeah, and I think the expectations are really high, and I don't think the standards there to match, but we will be talking a lot more about that as we get
Especially because this
to the
is
fall.
arguably the best chance that they have since '94 because it's on their own soil again.
Yeah,
I mean, granted, they had a really good chance when it was in Rio too, because they had Clint Dempsey and Michael Bradley and Jermaine Jones, Tim Howard. That was a really good World Cup squad, especially when they had that miraculous win against Ghana, that opening game with Graham Zusi's corner and the John Brooks header in the 86th minute, and then the 2-2 draw against Portugal with Ronaldo and that team with Ricardo Pepi as well, or no, Pepe I believe was there, not Ricardo Pepi because he plays for the USA now. Um, and then obviously the 1-0 loss to Germany in the final group stage game, but they had already done enough to qualify. And then the loss to Belgium in the knockout stage. That was probably the US's best chance as well prior to the 2022 World Cup. This is probably going to be their best chance,
yep,
honestly, since 1994 when they were in their own backyard. So I honestly, if they don't get to the semifinals or win the World Cup this year in 2026, failure. If they don't win the Gold Cup now in July, failure. There's going to be a lot of questions in the next coming months if they don't figure a lot of stuff out and fast. And they got to figure out some stuff because people are going to start questioning, is it Mauricio Pochettino? Is it the team? Is it not enough fan support of US soccer? I don't know. I don't know.
yeah. So let's see, but we got a lot of stuff to look forward to right now in summer. Mike, another great special edition episode
Yes, sir.
was Muelendez Monthly. Start a joke.